अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, आप देख रहे हैं नसीम ज़हरा पाकिस्तान। आज हमारे साथ एक बहुत हमारी ख़ास मेहमान हैं। UNDP से इनका ताल्लुक़ है, UN असिस्टेंट सेक्रेटरी जनरल हैं और UNDP की रीजनल हेड हैं, डायरेक्टर फॉर एशिया एंड द पैसिफिक, मिस कानी विग्नराजा। मिस कानी विग्नराजा पाकिस्तान में आए हुए उनको आज तीसरा रोज़ है, तो हम उनसे गुफ्तगू शुरू करते हैं और अंग्रेज़ी में उनसे बात करेंगे और उनसे हम पूछेंगे कि उनके क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस रहे पाकिस्तान के हवाले से, अहमियत वगैरह। वेरी वार्म वेलकम मिस विग्नराजा टू पाकिस्तान।
थैंक यू।
एंड स्पेशल वार्म वेलकम ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ चैनल 24 City News Network. We are delighted that you will be talking to the people of Pakistan through our platform. And we are also delighted that you come at a time when we have a new government with the challenges, some are old, some are new, and you come with very, very rich experience. I have heard that you are very interested in digitization, in governance issues and a lot of other issues. So let's start with what's topmost on your mind right now.
Thank you. Well, it's such a pleasure to be back in Pakistan, and it's a country and situation I've been following for many years. So for me, it was very important to be here at this moment when there is a new leadership. They're looking at what are the policy spaces, what are the investment opportunities, what are the big transformations that this country really has to not only propose but has to commit to over a period of time. These are issues we are looking at together with many of our national colleagues, the partners, the government, private sector, to see where are the big economic reform agendas. You can't have economic reform without social justice, and you can't have either of those if you don't look at some of the governance underpinnings. And these days, climate change is upon us. So when you put all this mix together, it is a huge challenge for all of our countries. And it is whatever UNDP and the UN system can do to support Pakistan. This is what I'm here to discuss, to have dialogues, to really look at the appetite for change.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at basically going through what the UN agenda is. I mean, generally, and crisis prevention, recovery, energy, advocacy of change, connecting countries to knowledge, experience, resources, and help build a better future for people, end poverty, etc. This is a mouthful, but all very critical. So when you come to Pakistan at this time, what is it that you have in mind? I mean, people would like to know what, practically, what is it that you are proposing, or are you just exploring at this point?
No, I think we have, I think the time, I mean, we will continue to explore,
Yeah.
but I think the time is actually to move on some key actions. Now, to do that, I think what a lot of our national partners rely on UNDP and the UN system is to put impartial evidence on the table. That evidence is national data, very local data, but at the same time to bring what is working in other parts of the world, right? And not just in Asia. My coverage is Asia and the Pacific, but having a global organization like UNDP, it's our responsibility to bring things that work and some things that don't work, and to say, look at this in the local context. A good example is, in fact, what you mentioned as one of our the interest areas is, in order to move some of the economic agenda forward, we have seen in the last few years that Pakistan has not rebounded from a post-COVID recovery that many other countries have seen. So after a period where human development indicators were going up, poverty was being reduced, even child mortality rates had decreased, for example. Then we saw with COVID, the world stopped. But then Pakistan also then had the shocks of climate, the floods.
Some bad floods.
And with that, a lot of that, the fiscal space and the debt distress just got accentuated. So the ability to recover from this has been very difficult. So it is to see what is the first stage, which is stabilization. And with that macroeconomic stabilization that we are seeing now, what now can turn a right kind of growth to say, how does this affect people? So for us, it's not just about even the analytics and the evidence. It's testing some of the things to get more services to people, particularly health, education. These are big areas. And just yesterday, we launched the National Human Development Report for a digital Pakistan. That will also improve. You know, the digital, it's not a magic bullet, but it helps bring efficiency, greater reach of public services to people in even very remote areas.
Greater accountability as well. That goes
Absolutely, greater accountability. And something I found very interesting is women in Pakistan are picking up more on the financial inclusion. Right? So on the mobile wallets, more women than men seem to be interested because it also is in their control.
Yeah, and I guess Pakistan's government with the Benazir income support program, and during Imran Khan's government when they kind of spread the SAS program, they've made a special effort irrespective of which party has been in place. So when you talk, it's interesting when you say that post-COVID Pakistan hasn't rebounded, you know, and you've explained yourself, natural disasters, etc. Because during COVID, Pakistan seemed to have done pretty okay, you know. Post-COVID, the fiscal aspect, the economic aspect, you know, we really under this burden of inflation, and it's just getting worse and worse, and more IMF programs mean, you know, you refer to macro stability that comes at a cost if comprehensive change doesn't take place. So food prices go up, all of that. Energy costs go up. So this may not be exactly your agenda, but surely you're looking at all of this. What's the way out? Because next IMF program means macro stability at one level, but it means more poverty, you know, more people going below the poverty line?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it really depends on how some of these reforms are implemented. So if I look at just the instrument of taxation, for UNDP it's very important that the tax policy is not a regressive one. It must be a progressive one. And the tax burden must be carried by those who can afford to carry it, because like in many countries there is a very wealthy class, and often they're the ones benefiting from the tax exemptions. You know? Our countries often are not putting a value, the right value, for example, on real estate, on land, right? On wealth assets. So there is a large percentage of people who are getting away with paying very low or no tax at all. And so when we say tax, it shouldn't be a tax on the poor. It shouldn't be to cause basic food prices to go up. There's an interesting debate, for example, you know, when subsidies are removed, let's say on fuel, right? that hits everyone. But subsidies are very blunt instruments. The idea would be that you can look at a couple of different things. One, while removing the subsidies, you must have very strong social protection programs. This could even be a minimum basic income for all those under the poverty line.
That's what I think this government has, governments have tried in this country.
But this is very key.
Yeah.
You know, that it
targeted
must be,
subsidy.
That's right, it must be implemented. This is a basic income that goes to households.
Does this become part of your policy debates when you're, when you're here, for example?
Absolutely. Because it, and then the other is, the idea is also, if you remove subsidies, let's say from things that are polluting, like fossil fuels, it should encourage at the same time a green economy.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we're seeing this shift happening in other countries, where the
solar
move,
power,
yes, to solar, to wind, to hydro, and to sectors like transport, which should be non-polluting in terms of. So there are different ways in which these instruments cannot be blunt, and fundamentally, one must give more opportunity to those who have not had a chance to benefit.
I think Pakistan has kind of moved along the trajectory and very much conscious now of what you were saying, because I think we are now at the edge in terms of, where you absolutely need very urgent reform. So just coming back to the question of digitization, that's a big deal in terms of influencing human thought, social action, collective thought, political, etc., and e-government, all of that put together. How do you see that? First of all, how are you seeing that unfold in Pakistan, if you have looked at that area?
Well, we certainly, I found the analysis, and it was for me very informative to read the National Human Development Report. I must say something that surprised me was that it is a very low digital adoption rate in Pakistan, even compared to many of the countries around the region. So the first is, how do you increase access? Now, mobile technology is on the upswing.
Yeah, in this country.
That's right.
Very much.
But the affordability of internet is high for a number of people. And there is, certainly there's a big difference between urban, rural, and men and women. So the issue of providing affordable, reliable internet access for businesses to run, for public service, to extend their services to remote areas, for banks to offer internet banking, for example. These are happening in many countries around the world, even countries that are worse off than Pakistan from an income point of view.
I'm really surprised when you say this, because obviously I'm going to go away better educated, because the sense we have here is that there's a lot of coverage in terms of mobile phones, in terms of, the internet is cheap, etc. But you're saying it's different. नाज़रीन ब्रेक लेते हैं, ब्रेक के बाद वापस आते हैं, गुफ्तगू को जारी रखते हैं. हमारा ख्याल था इंटरनेट बहुत हर जगह हर एक के पास है, फ़ोन हर एक के पास है, लेकिन हमें बता रही हैं मिस विघ्नराजा की फ़र्क बात है. हमारे साथ मिस कानी विघ्नराजा हैं, ये UNDP की असिस्टेंट सेक्रेटरी जनरल हैं और UNDP की रीजनल डायरेक्टर फॉर एशिया और पैसिफिक भी हैं. So we were discussing internet and mobile telephones, etc. Obviously mobile penetration is more than internet access. So where does all of this fit in terms of a digital agenda in any country and then Pakistan?
Well, we have found that it's probably, of all of the global public goods, this could be the fastest, probably the cheapest one to actually tackle. And it's an easier one to deliver to a population than many other including renewable energy, which is a tougher thing to mountain to climb. So for us as UNDP, and that's why we've done this new report, we did a survey district by district in this country to look at what we call a digital adoption measure. So for the first time in Pakistan, in every district, we have provided now the digital adoption. And
which means what? Sorry, I would like
the use of the ability to use internet, that they service digital services available or not for the population of that district.
So that's part of your survey?
That's correct. And that showed us that for Pakistan, the digital penetration is below 50%, which for a country that wants to grow and prosper and not leave a large part of its population behind, this is not sufficient.
Given the fact that the youth bulge is like one of the highest in the world.
So this is, you have a 60% of the population is under the age of 30. So when I hear the term digital hesitancy, people who are hesitant to use digital tools.
Is that a finding?
That is a finding.
So it's not like lack of availability, it's like hesitancy?
So it's both. Lack of the infrastructure, lack of affordable internet service, and digital hesitancy. So when you unpack a bit this hesitancy, because I'm thinking this is a very young country.
Yeah.
Then you come across some of the deep behavioral, social, cultural norms. So another interesting point of the survey is that something like 83% of the women surveyed said that their husband or their father had to approve them owning a cell phone. 77% of men said they didn't have to ask anyone. If they wanted to own a cell phone, they would own a cell phone. So while we can all, as a global community, as a local community, talk about access to cell phones, access to internet, which should be, in my mind, a universal access, we have to also look at some deep social and cultural behavior patterns. All women should have access to the same services.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting because in Pakistan, for socio-cultural, religious things, the internet, and if you go into YouTube, it's used widely for even kind of religious purposes and, you know, kind of spreading the message, whatever the message is, that it surprises me. I mean, you're saying there's hesitancy. I wonder how much of this hesitancy is linked to lack of availability of the infrastructure.
That it would be interesting to know. There is obviously a big divide, rural and urban. So that came out very much. There is the obvious age divide, but as I said, that should have been increased because of the youth population. But one of the things that we do want to do is to increase the capability, also a public service that can be delivered.
That's important. That's critical, I guess, in some ways, the backbone, because again, people in the rural areas, you know, connected to the cities and whatever, it's like one thing you feel like every family has. Even in the rural areas, you may not have an iron or you may not have a pencil, but you'll have mobile phone. That's how intense. But again, you are saying there's a difference between digital and mobile phone access. So have you spoken to the government about it? Did you get a sense that they're wanting to change this around?
Yes, I think there is. Again, I think for any government in the world, including the government in Pakistan, this is an easy win.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You know, so I
low
think
input, high
absolutely. So this, I think, is something that is going to be taken on, and a digital Pakistan, in our read, and this comes out of the report, by any measure, is something literally within reach.
Yeah, and it's very critical,
Absolutely.
given the challenges here. What is your sense, when you talk to the government here, that their plans to deal with this, decreasing human development index of Pakistan? That's worrying. How does the government see it?
I think right now, and coming out of the transition and into the new government, there is, as there must be, a significant focus on just stabilizing the economy. So there is a lot of focus on macroeconomic stability. Now we are seeing that those measures are improving in the last few months. For UNDP, we put as much emphasis on the fact that what's the point of macroeconomic stability if you cannot measure the well-being impact on people. So the Human Development Report says Pakistan's human development measure is going down. Now that means increasing investment in people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
People must be able to earn a decent living, and particularly in health and education. But today Pakistan is putting more money, as it also has to service the debt than it does for health and education.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should really compliment UNDP. One of the outstanding reports that was produced, I think, a couple of years ago, where inequity in terms of wealth in this country, those issues are kind of very critical and very basic if you want to change this whole picture that we have of inequalities and lack of opportunity. Do you see any willpower, any political will or any administrative will in Pakistan to tackle that?
I do, because one of the key findings, and this we found across the Asia Pacific when we did a regional human development report, people feel more strongly about the injustice of inequality than they do about poverty. No? And this even goes back. I remember the first human development report we did, 1990. This was Dr. Mahbubul Haq and Amartya Sen, the two together, that duo, right? They said this sense of injustice, the unfairness, is what angers even more than a sense of being poor. And that is a very powerful motivator for leadership. So I think across our countries there is this sense that you cannot have the wealthier growing wealthy on the backs of the poor.
I mean, when you look at democratic governments, countries, and then when you look at Pakistan, here I guess we can say we have more democracy than other countries because we have more governments than other countries, because midway governments are thrown out and are sent home and whatever, or go home. So in that context, the policy question becomes critical. You have certain policy objectives. Are they continued? Are they not? Is there discontinuity? And what is the cost of discontinuity?
I think it's a very good question, because to me, any form of a vibrant democracy gives a right to citizens to move, change, shift their governments that are in power. There's a difference, though, between changing political leadership and constantly changing policy direction. And I think the countries that show steady long-term policy consistency, irrespective of political leadership change, you see over time just reaching closer to the Sustainable Development Goals, showing a steady rebound after COVID and shocks. So this issue of keeping basic institutions steady and policy steady on that path, that is a capable nation and a capable state, which is a very different thing to the fact that people have a right to say
completely
to completely change political leadership but a nation must hold on, and a state must be built on consistency.
So, which are the, I mean, obviously in our neighborhood, India has consistent policy since, since the 90s in terms of the economy, etc. Which other country do you see, in your sphere of work where the policies keep changing with governments, and what's the reason for that?
It's in different areas, I would say. What we have found, we were talking, we've done a lot of work on this recent phenomenon of extreme polarization. And in Asia and the Pacific, something that is more recent is that about 2/3 of countries now have greater levels of polarization than we've seen before.
Interesting.
And this is a very sad
high cost
fact.
to development,
it's
right?
a very high cost, and to people.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's a strange, again, when you unpack it, people think, the surveys are all the show, north and south, that people think they are more different to others than they actually are. So it's again a very curious, if you reflect on it, I somehow want to think I'm different to you, but we are closer on some of the fundamentals, So maybe the issue is a loss of shared spaces, of safe spaces. And that social cohesion, that sense of a social fabric, of a common purpose, where has that gone? Why are we losing that?
Inclusive versus exclusivity. Yeah.
So the issue then becomes about accountable governance and responsible leaders who should not be talking about the other. They should say, this is our, instead of always putting the other as somehow the enemy,
I guess, that is not to say that democracy creates that, but in that context of competition in a democratic context, I guess.
And then it erodes fundamental institutions.
Absolutely.
We have to, a democracy must protect the basic institutions of state. The independence of a judiciary, for example. Absolutely critical. The independence of the media, right? If we don't protect these, then what is the basis of democracy?
Polarization seems to hit each one of these, and kind of you see them almost becoming partisan as opposed to remaining independent and
that
objective.
Is the unfortunate thing.
Well, we must move to more optimistic spaces.
Yes.
हमारे साथ UN Assistant Secretary General, UNDP की Regional Director for Asia, मिस कानी विग्नाराजा मौजूद हैं. आखिरी सेगमेंट है, अब हम उनसे बात करते हैं ज़रा पाकिस्तान के अंदर क्या इन्होंने किया. You've got a great team in Pakistan, and seem to be active. You've been in Pakistan since now 1962. So tell us what programs do you look at in Pakistan and you feel, UNDP is doing a great job?
So this is our second largest program in the Asia Pacific.
In your region.
And they have some large areas, portfolios. One is in the economic policy and reform area that we've talked about. A second is in addressing the climate change issues,
big
from
issue.
Adaptation and linking also to nature-based assets, biodiversity, bringing that together is also a big area. The whole issue of supporting innovation and digital comes under that, the technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. I mean, again, for a young country, one can't have young people, even those who are semi-skilled, not finding decent work, decent jobs. So that's another area of looking at supporting entrepreneurship, innovation. We're very keen on looking at the energy question and seeing how much and how fast the country can transition to green energy.
Yeah, so what role would UNDP play? I mean, capacity building or training or technology?
All of that. So the analytics, so it is very firm. The design of policies and programs. And then we provide a space to test some of this in reality, you know. In countries like Pakistan, these pilots are big because, you know, a district in Pakistan is larger than a country. You know, so we're talking, you know, really scaling some of the effort. But it's a good opportunity for both provincial, district and federal governments to test some policies before they even take them on fully.
Any one that has been done you'd like to talk about? I mean, any particular?
Solarization, for example, very important. The other is disaster resilient infrastructure. You know? Right now, and I'll be headed to Balochistan, a couple of things we are looking at there is whether we can scale this flood resistant shelters and housing. You know, when people lose their homes, it is just you lose your safe space.
Of course, you're being part of your being
goodness,
goes. Part of
you know, and your identity, you know,
yes,
where
absolutely.
you belong.
Yeah.
And that sense, so for me, a house is never just a house. It's a safe space. And so really looking at rebuilding homes that can be flood resistant, but the same for small farmers. So those are, we test these models of better building codes that are resistant, and then that can be taken on by provincial governments.
Yeah, it's interesting because some people in their private capacities after the floods have done this. Nilufar Qazi is one of the active people who's doing it in Balochistan, and Pakistan has faced calamities at an unprecedented scale and frequency in the last 10 years. So how is UNDP looking at that? Is there any special effort? You think that it's a priority on Pakistan's own kind of list of to do activities?
Well, this is where some very bold choices have to be made. So Pakistan is not a high emitter country, but it can still reduce its own carbon footprint. So sector by sector, one has to look at how one helps to at least mitigate some of the impact. But then the biggest investment is in climate adaptation. And how do you really, early warning systems, that's another area which gives communities at least more time to prepare. But then it's a matter of making sure that farms are protected, schools and hospitals are protected. So that's the other area of looking at both renewable energy for schools and hospitals, but better building codes for schools and hospitals, because they too become safe places. So these are other areas that are critical. And then extending more and modernizing public administration. So for example, if you need a land registration, a birth certificate, a marriage certificate, anything, you don't have to wait or travel all the way to a urban city to get this. You should be able to go to a digital kiosk, a one-stop shop, and be able to get these services. Imagine the cost for poor people who can't get these done.
I think they tried to do it in Punjab. I don't know, other provinces.
They've tested some, yes.
Tested some. In terms of, before we close on calamity issues, the melting of the glaciers in Pakistan is, it's a huge, it's a kind of global challenge. Is there anything in specific that UNDP looks at, is looking at, or is it one of the kind of calamity issues as the rest? Is there?
No, this is, the mountain ecosystem, particularly the 6 countries that almost are the guardians of the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush. these are not guardians just nationally. This is for the world.
Yeah,
this is a massive natural asset. And so to see the glacier melt happening at this level, I mean, we see it in the Arctic as well, is devastating. So we are doing some mitigation measures, trying to reduce black ice that melts glaciers. Pollution is a big issue, but also trying to prevent GLOF events by, in fact, I'll be seeing this when I go to Nepal. Just like here, we work with the GCF to deepen the lakes so that they can hold more water, and then manage infrastructure where you manage the overflow, so you don't have these massive flooding in the valleys that can cause thousands of deaths.
Populations.
That's right.
Yeah, but I guess I don't want to end the show on this sad note. On Afghanistan, I just want to switch to Afghanistan. What is UNDP doing in Afghanistan, and in terms of, with the Afghan refugees here and with the Afghans inside Afghanistan under the Taliban?
Well, let me say, in Afghanistan, our program works directly with people. There is no work that goes through the authorities as we are. The whole UN is mandated and allowed to work directly with communities. I would say our biggest program across Afghanistan, where we now have access to the whole country, is livelihoods, particularly for women.
Really?
And something that many don't realize is women always ran the informal economy of Afghanistan. The community household economy is run by women. Well, I guess in most countries, this is the truth. So we have today direct support to 75,000 women-owned businesses.
75,000 women-owned businesses?
And when I meet these women, my goodness, I just, the courage, the strength, the determination to put their households and their local economies back on track, it is just
very, very positive.
Heartening.
Yeah, very inspiring. So basically around Kabul or all over?
No, across, I was in Herat recently.
Okay.
And when I see these business and the men supporting the women in their household to do this work. But similarly, it's looking at supporting health services. We do this a lot with UNICEF, with WHO, a lot of NGOs. So I have to say, in Afghanistan, the work we do together as a UN system, with INGOs, local community groups, is truly phenomenal.
It's showing results, yeah. Finally, some success stories in Pakistan. What would you highlight, I mean, when UNDP looks at its own experience?
I think one of the best rays of light is the youth of this country. Because when you see the innovation, they're not waiting for, what is the handout. No, they're taking, just like young people do all over the world.
All over the world.
They're saying, we're going to take this opportunity in our hands. Setting up startups, new innovation, new ideas, whether that's in science, in tech, so that you feel that energy, and that is something I think this country can capitalize on.
It's very dynamic, the youth and the force and the energy, and
absolutely,
everybody has a platform now.
Absolutely.
As well. So anyway, good luck for the rest of your trip, and it was great talking to you.
Thank you, and you too.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
नाज़रीन, इसी पे प्रोग्राम ख़त्म करते हैं. खुदा हाफ़िज़. पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद.